We will be doing 8 days to answer those questions.
To answer that question now, sir.
What is your name?
Shimon Prokopets from
Shimon.
CNN.
I hear you.
Because we've been given a lot of bad information. So why don't you clear all of this up now and explain to us how it is that your officers who were in there for an hour, yes, rescuing people, but yet no one was able to get inside that room.
Shimon, we will circle back with you. We want to answer all your questions. We want to give you the why. That's our job. So give us time. I'm taking all your questions. I'm taking them back to talk to the team.
Can you tell us how the door was barricaded?
Look, thank you for being here. We'll talk soon. We'll talk soon. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. So first and foremost, this video is going to be extremely tough. Okay. Not just because, once again, I have to talk about this tragic situation that happened in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 kids and 2 or 3 teachers were shot and killed by a maniac psychopath. But also because there's just been so many lies that have been told about what had actually happened that, quite honestly, guys, I didn't have no clue what the hell is going on, right? And that is kind of the point of this video, is to say that how in the world can we address this situation, what happened, and to come up with solutions to prevent tragedies like this from happening if we just continue to be lied to over and over and over again about what actually happened. Okay, now it seems to me that a lot of the lies, okay, or put it this way, the confusion, okay, is coming from the Texas Police Department, right, and law enforcement officials who are supposed to be giving us factual and objective information about what actually happened. Okay, however, the story has changed once again, to the point where, again, I'm telling you guys, I have no clue, okay? And I'm gonna drive home my point, okay, here in this video. But first, I want to kind of go over some things that have been said and some updates about what has changed about the story, so that you guys can get some grasp of what the hell is going on here, okay? Because honestly, I really can't. But with that being said, the first thing I want to start off with is the anger and the vitriol that have been directed at the police, who allegedly weren't doing anything, or put it this way, they weren't doing enough during this situation in which this shooter, according to some reports, again, it could be 40 minutes, it could be an hour, hour and a half, again, we really don't know, was in the building for an extended amount of time, and police were not doing enough to prevent him from shooting and killing children and teachers, right? There's a viral video out of police outside with parents, basically holding parents down, right? And had tasers out, arresting parents who were trying to go into the school building to actually rescue their kids, okay? And it gets even worse, okay, because there's actually footage of one of the law enforcement officials admitting that while you had police holding down parents from trying to rescue their kids from getting slaughtered, there were actually police officers themselves that went into the building to try to rescue their kids, okay? Despite, again, keeping parents from rescuing their kids, and also not going into the building to actually confront the shooter. Take a look.
I heard that some law enforcement officers actually went into school to get their kids out. Can you talk about that?
Right. So what we do know, Vanessa, right now, that there was some police officers, families trying to get their children out of the school because it was an active shooter situation right now. It's a terrible situation right now. And of course, just as we mentioned, the loss of life, it's just terrible. It's a terrible tragedy now that took place.
Yeah. So apparently, while police were holding down other parents from rescuing their kids, you had police that apparently were brave enough to go in there and rescue their own kids. Again, now, that's confusing in and of itself, because apparently, you know, I'm sitting here thinking that police didn't want to go into the school at all because of, you know, the shooter being into the school and them maybe getting shot as they were going into the school, right? But apparently some people went in there, right? And apparently also some parents went in there as well too, okay? But here's another part of the story that has changed, as apparently when they first told the story, there was allegedly a school resource officer that was outside of school that confronted the gunman as he was trying to get into school, right? And at first they said that no shots were exchanged, and then they said that the gunman had actually shot at the school resource officer. Again, that stuff changed, okay? And now they're saying that there was no school resource officer at all, right? And that this guy, the gunman, just literally walked up into the school and went into the school through an unlocked door. Take a look.
Willie, good morning. Look, I think it is worth noting the fact that this investigation is still being conducted. We're learning new pieces of information about what happened when in this tragic sequence on Tuesday. That said, what we have heard from local law enforcement officials here is not only confusing, but utterly conflicting. To your point there about this being breathtaking, just all sorts of information that does not align, starting, Willie, with what happened when the shooter arrived on campus. We know this, that at 11:28, he crashed his grandmother's truck after he shot his grandmother, pulled out of the car with a long rifle and fired bullets at nearby witnesses at a funeral home. Then some 12 minutes later actually did enter the school. But this is where it becomes extremely confusing. We heard just a second ago from the regional director there that there was no school resource officer to confront him. However, 24 hours prior, the director of DPS offered an account of that exchange where he says there was a courageous confrontation with the school resource officer. 24 hours later, that person no longer exists. That's question number one. Also, how did he actually get into the building? They say it appears that a door on the side of the building was unlocked. And now look, Willie, you can double your security budget, which in Uvalde County here, they have done just that. They've doubled security at this school district. And yet if a door is left open, kids' lives will be compromised. It appears that that was fatal consequences in this case. Now let's move over to what seems to be the most dissected aspect of all of this. At 11:44, 4 minutes after the gunman entered the school, Robb Elementary School, that's when local law enforcement arrived. According to officials, they had to retreat under fire. There was an AR-15 style assault weapon the shooter was using. They left the building and waited for an hour. And you heard the explanation there just a second ago for precision riflemen, tactical gear, specialized equipment, and negotiators. Now, the president for the School Safety Advocacy Council, which trains Willie schools on how to respond to school shootings, said that sort of thinking is completely outdated, basically since Columbine. That now protocol is for law enforcement officers, whether it's 1, 3, or 4, to enter the building immediately if there is an active shooter situation and try to neutralize the threat. And yet here, it took until 12:47 for CBP to arrive and, quote, neutralize the threat. And in that time frame, we've seen the video, Willie, of parents standing outside and just wondering what is going on here. They were trying to rip down fences, break into windows to get into that school building so they could do whatever possible to try to save their kids' lives. And ultimately, 19 children between the ages of 8 and 10, fourth graders, murdered as an hour goes by. And that really is the heart of this investigation right now, and so many questions surrounding that very issue. Why do you have a Texas law enforcement agency saying the protocol was to wait for this sort of more tactical assistance and special forces to arrive to handle the situation when there were kids dying by the minute inside of that school? And where? You know, you mentioned one classroom. Originally, we were told that all of the victims were in that one location, and now it appears that there were 4 classrooms with kids and potentially teachers affected. Willie?
And Sam, as you say, we're looking at this video of parents. We now have firsthand accounts from parents who say they, in fact, did go into the school and get their kids. They just weren't going to wait anymore. Sam, stay with us.
Yeah, so that is the latest update that I can find, right? Account in regards to what happened. So again, there's a whole lot of discrepancies here. We don't know whether or not there was actually a school resource officer that was there, okay? The door was open at the side of the building. You also had parents that actually apparently did go into the school to try to rescue their kids. Again, there's all types of conflicting information. But I think that there was something else that was very, very damaging that was said by some of these law enforcement officials about why in the world didn't the police do more in regards to confronting the gunman before he could kill all these kids. And one of these guys actually really stated on camera that apparently the police were scared of being shot, and that is why they didn't do more. Take a look.
Well, was it a mistake, do you believe, Lieutenant, for the officers on the scene who were there, as you correctly point out, to wait for this second tactical team to arrive before fully pushing into that school and neutralizing the gunman?
So what we do know, Wolf, is that there was multiple officers that arrived on scene. There was 3 officers that arrived that made entry at one of the entrances where the gunman actually made entrance to. We had another 4 officers that made entry at the other entrance of the school. So there was officers inside that school. As they were taking gunfire, they were also calling in for reinforcement, backup, tactical teams, snipers, any additional personnel that could arrive to assist to not only with the situation, but also to assist in evacuating students and teachers. At that time, that's when a U.S. Border Patrol tactical officer arrived, also with a Zavala County Sheriff's deputy, as well as 2 additional Uvalde Police Department officers were able to go into that classroom with a ballistic shield as cover. And of course, we know that one of those officers, an agent, actually was shot, was grazed at the top of the head, but they were able to shoot and kill the suspect and preserve any other life. We know that there was other injured children inside that classroom that they were able to save as well and get them to cover. And at that point, it became a recovery process, a rescue operation, trying to rescue the injured and also any other potential children or teachers that were inside those classrooms.
But don't current best practices, Lieutenant, call for officers to disable a shooter as quickly as possible, regardless of how many officers are actually on site?
Correct. The active shooter situation, you want to stop the killing, you want to preserve life, but also one thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school. So they were able to contain that gunman inside that classroom so that he was not able to go to any other portions of the school to commit any other killings.
Yeah, so according to this guy, apparently some officers confronted the gunman at the doorway in which the gunman actually went in, and they took some fire from the gunman, and then there's some officers that went in through another entrance, okay? And apparently they ended up, containing the shooter in one classroom, even though there are reports that the shooter actually went into other classrooms as well too. And apparently they couldn't break down the door into a tactical unit came in, but there's some reports saying that the reason why they didn't go in is because they didn't have a key, okay? And apparently a teacher or a janitor or somebody had to get a key in order for them to actually get into the classroom. And again, it just leaves a whole lot of questions as to, well, what were those officers doing? Did they actually enter the building, or did they didn't, right? We don't really know, okay? Because again, there's some people, some accounts saying they were actually in the building rescuing kids. Okay, there's some accounts saying they weren't in the building. They didn't want to enter the building because they were scared they were going to get shot. Okay, if they actually were in the building, okay, and they had barricaded this guy in the classroom, why didn't they try to enter? Okay, why did they wait to try to enter? Okay, why didn't they just go in and try to take the guy out? Were they trying to negotiate with the shooter? Again, there's some reports out there that saying that they tried to negotiate with the shooter. Again, that's all to say, I don't know what's going on. And with that being said, there's a whole lot of lies being told, and we may never, ever, ever find out the truth as to what actually happened. But one thing I will say is that there has to be some type of camera footage, some security footage, something has to be available that can objectively tell us what happened, right? Were officers actually in the school? Okay, did they actually go in there? Did they actually confront the shooter? Okay, did they all just stand outside and wait? Did parents actually go in there and rescue kids? Did officers go in there and rescue kids? Were they negotiating with the shooter? When did the shooter actually start shooting kids? Okay, how long actually passed before the shooter actually entered to the school and before he was killed? Did the shooter actually kill himself? Because they're saying in some reports that the shooter actually killed himself, that he wasn't actually shot. I'm just saying, it is impossible to figure out what actually happened. So we can't even have a conversation about how to prevent these things, okay, or what to do about it, because we don't know what happened. We don't know. If there was no security officer there, no school resource officer there that, confronted the guy, then how can we sit here and say that armed security wouldn't have worked? How can we say that if there was no armed security? if the school door was open on the side, then obviously this school wasn't following security protocols, which means that, hey, maybe schools following security protocols, which is what the GOP is, a bill they're trying to pass right now, the Democrats are blocking. Maybe these schools following these security protocols would have helped prevent kids from losing their lives. How in the world can we put forward any solutions or anything if we don't know? And again, the sad part is that the more facts that you wait for, it seems that the story gets more confusing and it continues to change, which to me indicates that there's some foul play going on in this situation, that there's something going on that either the authorities don't want us to know about, the school officials don't want us to know about, the media doesn't want us to know about. There's something going on here that is going to make somebody look really, really bad, or a certain group of people look really, really bad, and that's why the story keeps changing. That's why we can't figure out what's going on. So with that being said, I'm just going to say this. I want to see the security footage, right? I don't want to hear nothing else from nobody about what happened until we have some security footage, some objective security footage, body camera footage from the police officers, because if they went into that building, right, there should be body camera footage supporting all this stuff, okay? But I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those situations where mysteriously school doesn't have cameras, or if they do have cameras, the cameras happen to shut off right at the time in which the shooter actually went in, or police just happened to not be wearing body camera footage, or the body camera footage went missing, okay, or there's no audio of what happened, or the audio went missing. Wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised. Again, I'm not a conspiracy type of guy, but I'm just saying, somebody's trying to cover their ass because a mistake was made, because there's no excuse for this, which again indicates that there's some foul play going on here. There's something going on here that is more than what we can see or what the media is telling us, right? But again, it seems at this point, even the media is confused. Nobody really knows. Nobody knows. And it's frustrating because we can't come up with solutions on how to save kids' lives if we can't even figure out why they lost their lives in the first place, right? So with that being said, I'm not trying to confuse you guys even more. I'm just saying, for me personally, this is kind of like the Russia-Ukraine thing. When that first happened, how they was telling us how basically Ukraine was getting destroyed, Kyiv was going to be taken over in like a matter of days, and all of a sudden they're telling us that Russians are getting their ass kicked. This is just impossible to even talk about, right? It's impossible to comment on. It's impossible to say anything because we're just being lied to. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.